Shalom Chaverim, I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live, and this evening, friends, there are two fronts that are boiling right now. Of course, the front in Syria with Idlib, Russia continuing their airstrikes, Russia also suffering a little bit of a setback. And of course, here on the home front in the United States, where President Trump is being attacked from within inside his own administration. We're going to be looking at both of these stories here this evening as we get ready here on Israeli News Live. First, I want to share with you some footage that the Kremlin has released there of their own strikes in Idlib using precision-guided bombs there. And of course, their video footage is a little bit better contrast than what we normally see from the U.S. officials, but I'm sure the U.S. officials are trying to prevent the intelligence behind their munitions to be revealed as easily as what the Russians are doing there. But the Russians definitely conducting some pretty heavy-duty strikes there in the Idlib province, and of course not without a price of their own. We see the Russians faced a serious strike against an outpost that they have in Jorin's military outpost west of Idlib, north of Hama, following an attack with a anti-tank missile, the ATGMs, launched by terrorists and destroying a Russian T-72 tank. That's what the image here that you're seeing on your screen now, the one we actually posted here at the beginning of our broadcast. I am sure Russia is not just going to sit back and allow the destruction of this tank here. And we don't know if there's any report of loss of life as of yet, but of course also a fire breaking out in this region. But Russia is definitely not going to just sit back and allow that particular strike to go unanswered. Russia generally really responds even heavier as a result with their airstrikes there. Also, we have here, this article was shared via Israel News Fusion. The secrecy is unveiled in a race to destroy the Iranian facilities in Syria. It was something that Ynet News has put out that was kind of unexpected from what they write in the article here, that Israel was revealing that more than 200 Israeli attacks on Iranian targets in Syria exposed the entire intelligence front active at any given moment of what's going on there. They talked about dropping 800 bombs, missiles by the Israeli forces, an amount that adds up to half used in a real war. Some were launched to long ranges, and almost all operations that are meant to take place under the radar, all participants known very quickly or even in real time, whose fist gave the punch hundreds of kilometers from Israel. It's just kind of odd how Israel is continuingly to try to stop the Syrian government, Bashar al-Assad's ability from defeating the very terrorist in his nation. I find it kind of odd that Israel begins striking, as they say, quote, Iranian targets inside of Syria at the very time that the Idlib operation began. Now, I understand Israel's right to protect itself, its citizens, from the threats that have been made by Iranian forces in the past, but I also realize that timing sometimes reveals more to us than what we realize, and that is something that we have to watch. Also, RT picked up on a very interesting article that we shared with you guys the other day, and I had no idea that the Jerusalem Post was forced to remove their article. The IDF confirms Israel provided light weapons to Syrian rebels. This was something that the Jerusalem Post published, how that the IDF was arming and giving ammunition and cash to Al-Qaeda militants, al-Nusra militants inside of Syria. Well, so much for freedom of speech. They said they had to remove it based on national security. What kind of national security is that? Are we afraid that the evangelical movement that is supporting Donald Trump might have second thoughts about what our country is doing? Arming jihadists, arming the very groups that are known to behead children in the region, the very group that turns women into prisoners inside of their hijab that they wear there? the ones that brings more human abuses, human rights abuses than any other groups in all of the region? Yeah, it would be troubling for me as well as a Jewish believer to know that our country is supporting. You know, it's one thing to see the different images that have come out of Syria, and I've seen them from different reporters there, including RT. I've seen them from Vanessa Beeley. I've seen them from Ava Bartlett and different other outlets there in the Middle East, showing that when they would overcome the jihadists in the region and they would capture their arms depots, many times they showed photos and images of Israeli weapons inside of Syria. You'd be surprised how many times I never reported it. Once or twice I give a little hint about it, but I didn't because I couldn't verify it myself, and I didn't want to think that my own people, my own nation was there arming terrorists to overthrow Bashar al-Assad, who was not a threat for the Israeli people. And if anything, he was the best bet we had in the Middle East. Well, there's a far more sinister plan at play here than what we realize. And when the IDF admitted it, and the Jerusalem Post published it, and then the Israeli government says for national security, remove that from your website, that lets me know we are arming terrorists. And our government has lied to us and to the world about what our actions are in the Middle East. It also confirms when I said to you guys a couple of years ago when the Russians bombed the secret base up near Aleppo, in the mountains of Aleppo, and there were intelligence officers in there, including Turkish, Qatar, United States, Great Britain, and even one Israeli intelligence officer was operating in that special facility, that these things are true. Our country has been involved in breaking the very covenant that our forefather Jacob made with Laban. A pile of stones were we laid there and said, we would not cross over this pile of stones to do thee harm. We can't argue that God give Abraham this land and we have a right to go take it. That's Abraham's descendants. Moses showed us what was our land, and no, it did not include going all the way over to the Euphrates River, what Moses said that we would be given in this land as we came in there. And that was for 12 tribes, not 3. All right, so there's something that we have to think about here. We were commanded by God himself that Moses related to us, leave the Ishmaelites alone. He said he'd given them this land. They had defeated the Zamzamim. But we don't keep those covenants. This is what has caused us to be driven from our land time in and time again. Yes, we're home. We're back in our homeland. But we still are doing the exact same things that we did 2,000 years ago. Not one thing has changed. We still teach Talmudic lies. We still justify it. And even the very man named Yeshua, who was a rabbi among our people, came and told us that we were doing all these man-made traditions and teaching them as doctrines of God, commandments of man. Have we changed a single thing in 2,000 years? Not a single thing, other than we don't have a temple and we're not offering sacrifices. It's interesting to see how even the Apostle Paul, who also was a Pharisee, who said after he believed that Yeshua was the Messiah, isn't it interesting how he said that we would be blind, our people would be blind, until the times of the Gentiles are complete. We need to stand with Israel, but stand with wisdom. Stand for the people of Israel. Now let's turn our focus to the United States. But before we do, let me just real quick point out too, Brett Bard is reporting that Turkey is losing to the Kurds in northern Syria as eyes turn to Idlib, weakening those forces there. The YPG and the PKK forces there, the Kurds that are inside of Afrin, are getting an upper hand. I'm sure glad to see this, because the world has stood by and allowed the Kurds to become a genocide people, just like the Armenians were. And that's kind of interesting. You ever notice why doesn't Israel, after our people have suffered the Holocaust, why didn't we take a stand for the Armenians and the crimes of humanity that were committed by the Turkish government against them? Oh no, can't do that. Because after all, probably the deal that was carved out between Israel and Turkey was to split Syria up at the end of the war. Now, I've heard about those documents already. I just haven't put my eyes on them. I will find them and I will share them with you. But turning our eyes back to the United States, something very interesting is happening. The New York Times reported, "I am part of the resistance inside the Trump administration. I work for the president, but like-minded colleagues, I have vowed to thwart parts of his agenda and his worst inclinations." Many are calling it treason, including the President of the United States. He doesn't actually call it treason, but he is very upset about what is going on in his administration. I could understand why. I don't fault the President for being angry over it. But the thing is it's happening, and I have a feeling, though, this situation really is not about President Trump. It's not about the 25th Amendment. Have you guys forgotten what I told you that I learned under the Obama administration from Secret Service official that shared with me how that the United States government, the deep state, was looking for an excuse to disarm the nation to get you ready for a new world order? I guess everybody forgot about that. They even went so far as to use the mind control techniques that they said they used in Tunisia when the guy set himself on fire and caused the Arab Spring. And I was told that our government was the one that did that with the skull-to-brain technology. I forget which way you say that. But that was the same thing that was being done. When the black man set himself on fire in front of the mall there, the National Mall there in Washington, D.C., and when the black lady rammed the gates of the White House and she was shot and killed, these were supposed to cause an unrest, and the failed to do so. As I was told, he just can't get the American people to get upset and to riot. Well, they tried it with the election of Donald Trump. That didn't seem to work. All those paid trolls out there, just can't get them to do anything. Then they have the school shootings. That doesn't seem to work either. Kind of got some momentum going, but still not quite enough momentum. All right, now I'm going to share with you a little bit of a clip here from Anderson Cooper. And I know, nobody likes CNN. It's all fake news. That's not the point. I want you to see something in this video here, because I have a feeling that this was done at a very optimal time to have the most impact to where a revolution could begin in this nation, and very easily. I don't think that the timing of the release of this article by the New York Times and President Trump being asked about it in front of a bunch of sheriffs from around the nations that were being honored in the Capitol, I don't think that it could have been a more appropriate timing to do this in order to set the stage for an unrest in this nation. Putting these law enforcement officers there, people that would stand behind the president, no doubt, as we can see in the enthusiastic video you'll be watching here. So to me, this is something that has been staged from the beginning. Whether the president is, as they say, worthy of the 25th Amendment or not, to me, is really moot in this case here. I think it has more to do with stirring the people up and driving the people to revolution. Because after all, what would bring the people to truly willing to fight for democracy? If they felt like their rights, their voting rights, were totally destroyed and ripped from their hands. After all, regardless of President Trump's personal life. The evangelical community has backed him like no other president in the history. And of course, with him being quote-unquote a young Christian, he's easy to forgive all those mistakes that are being made. But as I know personally, from personal experience that I am sharing in private meetings around the nation, I know what the underlying plan is. And that's to take you to a new world order. That's from the top. Let's look at the clip, though, here with Anderson Cooper here just for a moment. And you may hate Anderson Cooper. I'm not here to judge the man on that. But to listen to a little bit about the article and what's said. And then I want to show you an image that CNN captured to me that really says it all. Listen in for just a moment.
What he or she is witnessing and attempting to prevent the President of the United States from doing. A current senior official working with others inside the administration to frustrate actions by the President. Writing in the New York Times, quote, "We believe our first duty is to this country, and the President continues to act in a manner that is detrimental to the health of our republic. That is why many Trump appointees have vowed to do what we can to preserve our democratic institutions while thwarting Mr. Trump's more misguided impulses until he's out of office." This is not some Democratic operative writing this. This is somebody working in the Trump administration. This comes, of course, just one day after details emerged from Bob Woodward's book, details that sound very similar to what the senior official is saying. Listen to what else this official says about the president. Quote, "The root of the problem is the president's amorality. Anyone who works with him knows he's not moored to any discernible first principles that guide his decision-making." The writer does point to administration successes, but says they've come, quote, "despite, not because of the president's leadership style, which is impetuous, adversarial, petty, and ineffective."
All right, now that's just kind of giving you the idea for those of you that are not aware of the New York Times article of the Trump administration official that has anonymously come out to make public that there is a mutiny on board the White House. This is the type of thing that will cause a revolution in this country like no other. But I want to show you, though, and let's move forward to where, because you can read that part of the article yourself. This is what's important. All right, as he addresses the question, because the question was brought up to him, how would he respond? And this, I don't know the exact question, but they were looking for a response from the president in regards to the New York Times article. All right, it's not so much how the president responds. He is responding as he did about the man that wrote the book about him, that has a lot of derogatory information in there about the president, that he speaks about his accomplishments, the lowest unemployment rate in history in different areas. He speaks about these things, how they're building the wall, etc. Right? That's also said for a reason, in my opinion. Let me let you see, though. Pay attention to the imagery behind him.
Administration's done in terms of getting things passed and getting things through. Nobody has ever done in less than a 2-year period what we've done. So when you tell me about some anonymous source within the administration, probably who's failing and probably here for all the wrong reasons, no. And New York Times is failing. If I weren't here, I believe the New York Times probably wouldn't even exist.
All right, the reason why I wanted you to see this right here on this particular part here is these are sheriffs from around the country here that are in support of President Trump. Leaders of communities, counties all over the nation that have come together that he was honoring here. Now, my point is, these are the men that stand with the president, and they were very jubilant about his successes there. My thought is, though, is when we see an attack like this going public, a defector, someone committing mutiny on board the ship, and then you've got the heads of police departments from around the nation, you don't think that they wouldn't encourage their department officials to stand and fight for the democracy of the United States if they felt like that this was collapsing, if they do try to remove President Trump from office? This may be exactly what the deep state wants to begin with. When I was shared that very information, when I was in D.C. several years back under Obama's administration, that they were looking for something that would bring about this type of a revolt in the nation, what better scenario than either the impeachment or the 25th Amendment to remove a president that has become so popular with the people, especially with the Christian community around the globe, and Israel, and those that support Israel, both the Jewish and Christian communities. It's like no other president in history, practically, except maybe Abraham Lincoln or Eleanor D. Roosevelt. So, the question is this a setup? Are we being played? What will come next? I mean, we're already in a situation where the United States is about ready to go to war with Syria and take Syria out over an alleged chemical attack that hasn't even happened as of yet. That's a little bit odd, don't you think? All the propaganda and all the things that are going in there. And in fact, we just found out new information that I think it was James Mattis that actually had to ignore President Trump's anger when he was saying during the first strike on Syria after the alleged chemical attack, Trump was calling for the assassination of President Bashar al-Assad. Mattis overrode that. That kind of makes me wonder if James Mattis isn't the very one that leaked the information, or if he is not on board with the group of insiders, as this person here has said. There's more than one seeking to invoke the 25th Amendment. I don't know. It's up to you to figure these things out. I would say this, though. I would not want to be a part of any kind of nonsense revolution, because this is exactly what they want us to do. But if we do as they have done in the past in trying to rile the communities up around the nation, if we don't do anything, if we remain passive, they will fail once again at their miserable attempts to destroy the democracy of the United States. I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live. Erev Tov. Thank you, moderators, for tonight, for being with us, and I trust that the news broadcast is a blessing to you that are watching. Shalom, shalom.